Yazidi women, men, and children from the area of Sinjar have fled for their lives. And thousands, perhaps tens of thousands, are now hiding high up on the mountain with little but the clothes on their backs. They're without food, they're without water, people are starving, children are dying of thirst.
انقذونا انقذونا نذبح نبيد يباد دين كامل على وجه الأرض أخوان.
They killed 6 of my brother. They killed my mom. They took me to captivity with my 11 sister-in-law, with all my sister and my nieces.
بس أنت بدك واحد عمر أبوك اغتصب أختك.
It's 3 a.m. in the morning, August 3rd, 2014, in Iraq, specifically Sinjar, in a village so dark, with people so scared. All men were awake as if they knew something bad was going to happen. And suddenly, we got attacked by the Islamic State, and the whole village was illuminated by the intense gunfire, as if we were hit by lightning. They thought we wouldn't fight back, that we would give up easily, just like what the government did. But no, little did they know we were Yazidis, and we never bend down to enemies who want to kill us, change our belief, and make us suffer. I was 9 back then, so unaware, so confused, so scared of what was going on. I had never seen a war break out before my eyes. I asked my mom what was going on, but she didn't respond. She was frozen in fear. She also couldn't understand what was going on. The men in the village, armed only with their household weapons, kept fighting those ruthless terrorists who enjoyed being cruel until 6 in the morning. Then people, realizing that ISIS were advancing, started fleeing the village. We sought safety in a village called Hal near the mountain, which was about 7 miles away from our village. So many people fled their homes barefoot, running that entire distance just to get to safety. We tried to rest for a few hours, but the enemies were relentless in pursuing us. We were attacked again, but this time we faced 3 options: surrender and be killed, change our belief under pressure and convert to Islam, or brave the scorching heat of a lonely mountain. Determined to protect our belief even if it required sacrifices, we chose the latter. I was overwhelmed by the chaos unfolding right before my eyes at the foot of the mountain. People wandered barefoot, their faces blank with confusion, unsure where to go or what to do. There was no food, no water, just fear and desperation. Around 6 p.m., the alarming news began to circulate. Word spread that the enemies were approaching. In response to the imminent threat, people began climbing the mountain to hide their weapons. After ensuring their belongings were concealed, they cautiously made their way back to the foot of the mountain. However, that option seemed too dangerous, and as darkness fell, people began ascending the mountain. This time, ISIS reached the foot of the mountain and began to falsely assure us that we wouldn't be harmed if we returned to our villages, that there is no need to climb that tall mountain. But despite their cunning tactics, we didn't fall for their evil tricks. We were not stupid. We knew that going back to our villages would only lead to more harm and danger at the hands of the enemies. We knew who they were, and we risked our lives just to protect our belief. We were climbing the mountain until 9 p.m. Along the way, I witnessed scenes that no movie could ever capture. Mothers sobbing for their lost children, children crying for their missing parents, and elderly folks in tears desperately seeking their son's help. I followed my parents, but neither they nor I knew where the hell we were heading. It was fear guiding us through the unknown. The pain in my feet intensified as I wore torn shoes, but that was all I had. To my astonishment, some people didn't even have torn shoes. They were barefoot, bravely walking across the rough mountain path. As we finally settled in a safe spot, My mind drifted back to how comfortable I had been just the other day. But now everything had changed. Thirst, hunger, fear, and confusion gripped me entirely, turning me into a different person altogether. In the middle of that night, we caught sight of ISIS cars light, and fear gripped us as we thought they were coming to kill us. However, to our relief, they didn't come for us. Despite the tense situation, exhaustion took over, and I somehow fell asleep on some rocks while my dad and uncle stood guard to protect us. The morning light brought with it a glimmer of hope, but my heart sunk as I realized that everything I had experienced was not just a nightmare. It was a harsh reality, far worse than any bad dream I could have imagined. Once again, there was no breakfast and we had very little water. We endured the scorching sun atop the mountain, utterly exhausted and left confused. 3 days passed in this state with no food and only limited water, just enough to keep us alive. Every morning, the men would bravely climb down the high mountain to fetch water from a spring at the foot of the mountain. Their determination and sacrifices were the only reasons we had even that tiny bit of water to satisfy our thirst. On the 4th day, ISIS came to us and demanded that we convert to Islam, but we stood firm and said no once again. The only reason they didn't fight us over not converting to Islam was that they thought we would succumb to hunger and thirst and finally give in, returning to our villages. But they didn't know our resolve. We were determined to face death instead of renouncing our belief. Soon after, news spread that ISIS might return to the mountain again, but this time with a different threat. People were saying that ISIS had warned that they would kill all the men and take all the women if they refused to convert to Islam. The situation was dire and fear engulfed us all. When my eldest uncle heard about those warnings, he announced something that really shocked me. He coldly declared that he and the other men would kill all the women, including my mother, my sisters, and his own daughters, just to be safe from the enemy's hands. Can you imagine the horror of hearing such words, knowing that your loved one's life hung in the balance? All of that hit me like a bolt of lightning, leaving me pale, speechless, and almost in a state of unconsciousness. As I glanced at my mother, I couldn't find the right words to say. The weight of the moment felt suffocating. I feared that it could be the last time I would see her alive. An hour went by and still Mommy was alive. 2 hours, still alive. 3 hours, still alive. Despite the passing time, my mother and the other women remained amazingly unharmed. But the approaching danger persisted, and my eldest uncle repeated that they would kill all the women if they spotted ISIS coming. But then ISIS changed their mind. We were about 50,000 people trapped on that mountain, surrounded on all sides. There was no way out. ISIS knew that we would eventually give up and return to our villages. That's why they never attacked us while we were stuck up there. On the 9th day, a miracle happened, a real one. Some strong and brave Kurdish forces drove ISIS away from the north of the mountain and made way for us to move to Iraqi Kurdistan through the Syrian border and protected us until we all got to Iraqi Kurdistan. But still 500 Yazidis, including children, the elderly, and young adults died from dehydration, starvation, and exposure to the heat. Yazidis demand justice and many ISIS fighters still walk free. 5,000 Yazidi men and older boys were killed, most of them executed by ISIS in mass killings shortly after being captured. and 7,000 women and young girls were kidnapped and forced into sex slavery. In places like Kojo village, 400 men were slaughtered in a single day. The UN later described the Kojo massacre as a key example of genocide. ISIS intended to wipe out the Yazidi male population to break the community, but they failed. Yazidis are still uncovering mass graves to this day. Yazidi women are still used as sex slaves sold in markets like animals. But what about the government? Shouldn't they have protected us? Yes, but here is what happened to them. On June 6th, the big city of Mosul was attacked. By June 9th, most of the city had collapsed under ISIS pressure. On June 10th, Iraqi military forces had fully retreated, and ISIS had complete control of the city. Here is why the Iraqi army collapsed in such a short time. First, low morale. Second, poor leadership. Third, corruption. Fourth, being scared of the people of Mosul. And here is why the Iraqi army were scared of the people of Mosul. People were furious at the government due to corruption, lack of security, and they were looking for the slightest excuse to rise up against them. Almost all of them were armed. 85 to 90% of people of Mosul were Sunni Arabs. And as you may know, ISIS, the so-called Islamic State, is a Sunni jihadist group. It's even been mentioned in Al-Quran Al-Karim. من قتل نفسا بغير نفس أو فساد في الأرض فكأنما قتل الناس جميعا. It means whoever kills an innocent person, it is like as if they killed all of humanity. This means that ISIS does not represent the true teachings of Islam, but still many Sunni Muslims join them without hesitation, without knowing what their religion truly represents. They started killing us, raping us, claiming it was in the name of Islam. But again, Islam does not permit killing of innocent lives, and whoever does it is a terrorist, not a Muslim.